You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Dude, when have you seen me eat fruit?
Even in jam form?
I don't like jam or jelly.
I love how you count that as fruit.
Haven't you seen The Simpsons? You got any fruit, Dad? Oh, this donut has purple in it. Purple is a fruit.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Hunters are people, too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. I encourage you to check out albertapodcastnetwork.com/survey. Helps us improve the network. Helps us figure out what you like about the network. And then you can enter into a draw to win one of 3 cash prizes of $100. Can't go wrong with that. Brazilian Ty. I'm Travis Currah. Ty, how was your May long weekend, man?
I don't remember anything past about 8 p.m. on Friday, Saturday. Well, Sunday I remember because I ran out of beer.
That's par for the course, I guess.
Yeah, and I took my shirt off for like 2 hours and I complained how cold it was while it was over my shoulder. And we listened to Gloria about 50 times because we've hopped on the Blues bandwagon.
Yeah, how hard are you cheering for the Blues?
A little too hard after, as I can safely say after this weekend.
I don't really care who wins. The Leafs didn't make it, so I'm a happy camper. And I like the villain, so I'm a fan of Brad Marchand, and I would not be mad if he was hoisting the cup just to see all the whiners on social media.
No, it would not upset me because I have 6 Bruins in my hockey draft as well.
Yeah. Well, they made it all the way, so that helps you anyway.
Yeah, I'm only 40 points back.
Oh. Good
I
luck,
also had
buddy.
6 Flames, remember?
I went on a massive road trip back home to Yorkton, Saskatchewan for the May long weekend, and my cousin lives in Theodore, introduced me to this Chinese restaurant in Kenora, which is about 25 minutes north of Yorkton, and I have to tell you, man, whoa. And I don't know what it is. What is it about small-town Saskatchewan and these amazing Chinese joints?
I have no idea. There's one in Macklin that is phenomenal. When I was working down in Estevan's not like a small town, but there was a Chinese place right next to our hotel room. We ate there every second night. I don't know. It's just a staple.
What's the item you can't go without?
Oh, ginger beef for sure, and the dry ribs.
Yeah, I have to tell you, the ginger beef that they did in Kenora was incredible.
The one in Estevan was ginger chicken, and you could pick mild, medium, or hot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so you paid for it the next day at work in the middle of a canola field.
So the one in Kenora, you know how a lot of the times you get the ginger beef and it's basically pure breading? Like, what is this about beef?
I love that, though. That's my favorite part.
This one was actual beef. You know, the chunks of beef you get with the beef and broccoli? It was that, but thicker with the ginger sauce. Oh, I am drooling right now. I say we go on a road trip and hit up as many of these joints as we can this summer.
Well, when we go for May long, do we just take the long way to Regina then?
For Labor Day, we take the really long way.
Or Labor Day, sorry. Yeah. Might have to book a couple days off.
This will be awesome.
In the Huddle with Currah and Ty on the 2 and Out podcast.
Well, somehow we start every show talking about food, so that does not change anything. I guess the biggest news from this past week is that Wednesday it was announced that the CBA has officially been ratified. I believe it was 74% of CFL players voted in favor of it. So, I mean, it was a pretty good chunk of players that were okay with it. But this announcement did not come before some drama over the long weekend. And it's really hard to unpack what happened here. I was actually at this Chinese restaurant when I saw the tweet from Tony Washington saying, hey, it's official. The CFL players are actually going on strike. It looks like, from my point of view, that the owners pulled some shady dealings here. They got all the players to training camp. They put them up. They were ready to, hit the field the next day. And then they tried to go back on some of the language in the CBA. And as far as I can tell, it had to do with basically the American veteran ratio that they had put in. I don't know what was messed up about it, but some of the language in the past CBA basically allowed the owners to hold back bonuses this offseason. So good for the players for standing up and saying, hey, I know that we're here. I know we're going to have to pay for all of our lodging and our food if we're on strike, but no, you're not going back on it. We will go for the original deal, and that's what happened. But there were some tense moments Saturday night.
And yeah, super shady and like an underhanded business tactic. I get it. Not going to lie, I do the same stuff in fantasy sports. I know it's hard to compare the two, but the owners are businessmen. They're trying to get the best deal for themselves as much as the players are. And like you said, they were fully prepared to strike, and the CFLPA had money set aside. I don't know how much, but to help players travel home, because on a 24-hour notice, it's really hard to get bookings, and they get more expensive. So the PA had money set aside for the players that were in training camp in case this whole deal fell through again. So it's really nice to, and like you said, 74%. It's a pretty united front. I would like to see that number a little higher. But yeah, it kind of makes the owners look a little petty. And like you say, is like the way stuff is worded and the language in it. But I totally understand. They're just trying to get the best deal. Probably not the best way to go about it by any means, but I get it from both sides.
Yeah, and obviously there were some teams that weren't legally allowed to strike on the first day, but Rob Maver sent out a tweet saying to Winnipeg and Hamilton, and it was a gif of Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, and it looks
in The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, and it looks like basically the Bombers and the Ticats were going to show up and just stand tall, and
they were going to do nothing. They were going to be Brazilian Ty at work.
Yeah, they were going to show up to work and do nothing. So it was crazy on Saturday night with all of the misinformation or any information. It was crazy. It was coming from both sides, but I'm glad we got it figured out. A 3-year deal that is going to expire when the new CFL TV deal expires with TSN. You weren't on last week. What overall did you think about the CBA?
I don't know about this whole American veteran ratio thing. I almost feel like it's going to create another artificial cap. I do get why. I think it's going to be another step towards them lowering the Canadian ratio as well, which I don't think anybody really wants to see. But the owners now being on the hook for medical and stuff like that is something that needed to happen. I don't think this was going to be ratified without that happening. So I think that's a huge step for the PA. And like I said, 74%. We're going to have football, and in the long term, I think that's a benefit, because a year off or a labor stoppage where we have a shortened season isn't going to benefit anybody.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that American ratio, and I started thinking, what teams don't have that many vets anyway? It just kind of seemed a bit like lip service a little bit. just something thrown in there, throwing them a little bit of a bone. I don't know how many teams there are that don't have that amount of players that have been in the league for 4 years or with that team for 3 years, but I can see why the players would want something like that in, and I think the revenue sharing is big for them. The cap's guaranteed to go up $50,000 each year, and I believe the TSN deal right now is worth $40 million. So if Ambrosi goes to Mexico and Finland and whatever, and he gets these small deals, I'm just going to throw out a number, $5-10 million. The players, I guess 20% of that gets added to the salary cap divided by 9. So if a $5 million deal comes out, then the cap's going to go up by $100,000. So, I mean, some are pretty skeptical that he's going to keep his promise doing that, but I think right now we have to take him at his word and take the owners at their word, and I think that's big for the players.
Absolutely. It definitely is. And, like with this CBA expiring when this current TV deal expires, if they can get that TV deal done, and I would assume it's going to be higher. It's very rare that a TV deal goes down in value. That's going to affect the salary cap as well with the new negotiation. So it could potentially keep rising. That being said, I don't think that players will get paid necessarily more. Like the minimum will go up, but your top end guys are just going to make more money now. But that may be enough of an incentive to keep guys around for maybe an extra year or two before they go and try their hand at the NFL if they think they can make it.
This is a real interesting TV deal. Because if it's only TSN bidding, why would they up the number?
But the only thing I can say with at the Atlantic Schooners, does TSN... I know they've got 5 channels, and the same thing plays on all of them. Do they have the infrastructure to play 5 games a week, and have the play-by-play teams and the guys for the panel, and the time to do all that? Like I could see where maybe Sportsnet can jump in and grab 1 or 2 games a week, or CBC like it used to be, and that could create a little bit of a bidding war, and maybe have 2 contracts. At the same time, I don't know. I know TSN is, I don't want to say stepped in and saved the league, but they stepped up and gave this, signed the deal, and we have every single game on TV, which wasn't the case before. But I just, if they get to 5 games a week, I just don't see how I don't see how TSN could do it. Like I'm trying to think of play-by-play teams that they have, and Thursday Night Football. Rod Smith had to do games because they just didn't have a third team. So, and so that's the only thing I can see why it would possibly go up. Also, the value of the Canadian dollar is going to move at some point, and it's going to go higher. And all these contracts are going to have to just follow suit. And with it expiring, Sportsnet wants it. Sportsnet can make a bid at it because they. Other than the Jays, they don't have any other programming really during the summer.
Let's talk about some stuff that's been happening on the field. Let's go team by team and quickly go through each team as training camp gets underway. We'll start with the Alouettes, and they made an interesting move before camp got underway. Veteran receiver Ernest Jackson was released, and I don't know if I'm all that surprised because he has kind of struggled, especially last year. But, I mean, look at the quarterbacks he was playing with. But I see the moves that this team has made. And now I'm really wondering, they have to be in contention for second in the East. I know everybody's kind of saying, well, Hamilton has first place in the East locked up. And that's a dangerous game to play with injuries, and no games have been played. But the Owls, their biggest question mark to me is the quarterback position and the offensive line. But they've made some great moves. They bring in Seontae Evans, who was with the AAF after playing 14 games with the Stamps last year. He had an interception in the Grey Cup. So they've got him in the secondary with Tommy Campbell. The Owls have made some really good moves on the defensive side of the ball.
Don't forget Taylor Loeffler, too.
Well, yeah. If Antonio Pipkin can build on anything that he did last year, I think the Owls, I don't know, could they surprise some people?
I think they for sure could. I think I don't want to say that they're going to be like the Rough Riders, but I think early on in the year, their defense is what's going to keep them in games and win them some football games. And if Pipkin, like you said, can build on what he did last year and turn into a number one quarterback in the CFL, and the offense catches up, they could potentially catch Hamilton and be in a battle for first, late in the year, and definitely I think they are for sure in contention for second with Toronto.
They've got Jeremiah Johnson there and William Stanback, who I think is poised for a breakout season. But they have some young receivers as well. B.J. Cunningham is still there, T.J. Graham, Malcolm Carter, and DeVere Posey signed there as well. And you know what? They drafted some talent. The Alouettes are going to be an interesting team to watch this year. I really just hope that the off-the-field stuff doesn't create a bunch of distractions there. But it looks more and more like Vincenzo Guzzo, who you might recognize the name if you watch Dragon's Den, could be the new owner of the team. I guess he was recently seen with Randy Ambrosie. He's been on Twitter retweeting Alouette stuff non-stop. He's got a pile of cash. He owns movie theater chains in Quebec. Man, I feel like some cross-promotion stuff here, and he's got ties to football. This might be a good thing for the Alouettes. I don't know how true it is, but Arash Madani was on Sports Cage in Regina last week saying that I think it was Eric Lapointe's group was promised that if they buy the team, the Alouettes would be able to bypass the coaches and managers cap and talk to every coach in the CFL, which to me was a load of crap. Like, how many more handouts do we give these teams?
Two things. I don't believe a word that comes out of Arash's mouth. And two, if that is true, then what are we doing? Like, you're basically just letting them pillage the rest of the league and create a coaching staff and get basically, like you said, a handout and kind of whatever they want. But is Lapointe going to keep Ed Hervey there? Because if he does, or not Ed Hervey, sorry, Cavis Reed. So let's say, best case scenario, the Lapointe group gets the team. They get all of these concessions from the league to do what they want, but they leave Cavis Reed in power. They're going to be right back here in 2 years anyway.
It was just a bizarre scenario. I don't know where that would come from. But, I mean, the Bombers deny the Riders a chance to talk to Paul LaPolice by going through the legal channels, if you want to call it that. But the Owls would just be allowed to.
I don't see that going through without having a vote on it.
Yeah.
And I think every team in the league would politely tell Randy Ambrosie and the Montreal Alouettes to shove it.
Could they do this with the Schooners? I don't even know if we can say that they won't. They might have a coach's draft. Who knows if they ever come into the league?
Oh, man. Why do you do this to me?
Some people just like to watch the world burn.
I'm already in poor enough health. I don't need a higher freaking blood pressure.
The Alouettes also signed Canadian quarterback Chris Merchant. I'm surprised the Argos didn't get into the game on Chris Merchant, but it's cool to see that.
They don't have any room for him.
Yeah, that's true. And he will count towards the ratio if the Owls get him into games this year, but it's nice to have another Canadian quarterback on a roster anyway.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that I guess U Sport, I was going to call it CIS, you can develop guys who can get a chance. And we haven't had a Canadian like I guess Brandon Bridge, but like a guy who is going to start 18 games and win a Grey Cup for like before we were kids. So this is a great step, and like you said, the ratio thing now is not going to. I don't know if it really deterred teams, but it didn't give them an incentive to develop a Canadian quarterback. So that can really be a big asset for Toronto. For sure, because they have 800 Canadian quarterbacks on the roster, and now Montreal with Chris Merchant.
All right, let's go to Ottawa. Now, I believe if the Owls had Ottawa's coaching staff, then they would be really dangerous in the East Division. But Rick Campbell says it was just a formality as Dom Davis took first-team reps at quarterback on Monday. But does he have the inside track as a starting quarterback over Jonathan Jennings?
I hope not. From what we saw in the last couple of years, no. But the way Jonathan Jennings has played the last couple of years, it'll be a battle, but I don't think he's an incumbent.
I mean,
he can't be.
Again, they haven't hit the field yet, but the Ottawa Red Blacks offense took a beating.
Yeah, who's Davis going to throw to?
Well, how many targets can Brad Sinopoli get a game?
He's going to set a new record.
He might. He totally might. I mean, R.J. Harris came on last year. He's probably going to become a bigger focal point of the offense. Caleb Hawley signs there. Ryan Lankford is there. By far and away, it is Brad Sinopoli as the number one target. But then you look at running back as well. William Powell was such a big part of that team. And I'm kind of wondering, do the Red Blacks go Canadian at running back? Moses Madu is there. He's had injury problems. He's been there a while, but I don't think it really hurts if they go with Brendan Gillanders or Greg Morris at running back.
As much as I love Moses Madu, it's Gillanders and Greg Morris are just as good.
They probably
if not maybe a little better, and it adds depth, and you have the Canadian factor as well. So that is a distinct possibility in Ottawa, for sure.
That Ottawa offense is just pretty hard to look at. They even took shots on the offensive line, of course, with Sir Vincent Rogers going to Edmonton. So I think it's going to take a while for this group to come together. And I know they've got the coaching staff, and I will love Rick Campbell to the end of time. But man, there might be some rookies on that offensive line there. But they do still have talent there with Mateus and McMillan and Lazon Seguin. But Evan Johnson might step in, and hey, they drafted the rookie Alex Fontana. I just remember last year when the Saskatchewan Roughriders defensive line was just crushing everyone, and then the Red Blacks were able to limit Jefferson and Hughes when they rolled into Ottawa. So you never know. The offensive line might be able to surprise people this year.
And like you said, they're going to have their rookie growing pains. But with this coaching staff, that Ottawa is just, I don't know what it is, but they find these guys. They're almost like Calgary, and I'm not saying that they're as good as Calgary because I don't think they are. But the coaching staff they have in Ottawa is so good that it seems like the rookie growing pains are minimal, and they find guys and they create a system that works for the players they have on that offensive line. And like you said, they shut down Jefferson and Hughes last year, which almost nobody could do. And, that's just going to help these kids grow. And they still have a couple vets in there that'll help out too. So I honestly don't see them competing for a playoff spot, but I don't think it'll be 3, 4, 5 year kind of thing. I think it's just going to be this year is going to be getting the experience, and then with the coaching staff, if they're able to keep it together, they'll be back in the hunt next year.
We'll see some new names on the defensive line, but at least the secondary there's a lot going on from last year, and they bring in Chris Randall too. So Jonathan Rose is there, and Sherrod Baltimore and things like that. So the secondary should be okay, but a lot of other positions still need to be figured out in Ottawa. Let's go to Toronto, a team that has made a lot of moves this offseason, and they kind of surprised me by releasing two veterans. Bear Woods being gone means there's going to be a battle at linebacker in Toronto. I know I love Bear Woods, but the injury issues have not been kind to him. And they also let go 11-year veteran right tackle Chris Van Zyl. 2 Grey Cups with the Toronto Argonauts. And they ended up releasing him and signs with the team we're going to talk about next. But they make some signings as well, so maybe they wanted to get a little bit cheaper. They bring in Josiah St. John, former number 1 overall pick with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who last year performed well, but I guess his agent, Jonathan Hardaway, wanted proven starter money in the offseason. The Riders didn't want to give it to him. Toronto is willing to take a chance on him. They signed kicker Tyler Krapina, who was let go by the Riders after Lowthers, rise last year. They've signed defensive lineman Freddie Bishop III, who was in the CFL with Calgary and had just spent 3 years with the New York Jets. And they've announced James Franklin as their starting quarterback going into the season. And I know there was a lot of drama surrounding that position last year after Ricky Ray went down. So that's got to be big for the young pivot.
It's huge. You come into camp as a starter. You're getting number 1 reps. You're getting the majority of the reps, and with the number 1 unit, and create that. What's the word I'm looking for here? Chemistry. Boom, got it. You create that chemistry early on in camp, and he's got Darrell Walker there, who he was with in Edmonton. They already kind of know each other. So if they can get off on the right foot and get a good start early in the season. We could be looking at an East Division that isn't going to be complete. I don't want to say garbage because that's kind of mean, but that hasn't been up to par with the West Division the last couple of years.
They made a lot of signings. Kevin Fogg is now there. Toby Antiga is in Toronto. Yeah. So if they can bring these guys together, maybe it actually is a 3-team race in the Eastern Division. I know they got Sean Lemon back and Cleon Lang, so they've got some players that that can make and Micah Awe. I mean, the defense was brutal last year. Now they've got some hard hitters that will make you pay. But I mean, Toronto, Montreal, Hamilton. There, I don't want to write off Ottawa, but there might be some nice competition this year in the East.
And don't write off the special teams either. They lost 3 games in 4 weeks on missed kicks.
Yeah.
Kevin Fogg can flip your field position on returns. So, you take a look at that, and Toronto's all of a sudden in a playoff spot last year. So, these little moves, I know signing a kicker doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but when you look at what happened last year and some of the way they lost games, and it's like the games they shouldn't have lost, all these little signings and adding guys here and just filling a little hole here has really looks like it's going to be very beneficial for the Argos.
Let's go to Hamilton, who end up signing Chris Van Zyl through 2020. I liked Simone Lawrence welcoming him to Hamilton. These guys have played against each other for a while with a box of Timbits. That'll go a long way to repairing that relationship with the big guy.
Depends on what kind they were.
Well, do you go for the jam-filled ones? Because I'm not a fan of those.
No, dude. When have you seen me eat fruit?
Even in jam form?
I don't like jam or jelly.
I love how you count that as fruit.
Haven't you seen The Simpsons? You got any fruit, Dad? Oh, this donut has purple in it. Purple is a fruit.
Okay, honest, when's the last time you had some fruit?
Oh.
This is scary.
About 3 weeks ago, I think I had an apple.
Okay, I had some apple pie over the weekend. I had some sweet and sour sauce, which has pineapples in it, so I'm counting it.
Yeah, we didn't take any fruit to the lake.
Ty's like, I had a fruit roll up when I was 9.
Oh, actually, we had fruit roll-ups on the quad trail.
There you go.
And Teddy Grahams.
Okay, more about Hamilton. We talked about Ottawa possibly going Canadian at running back. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's where the Ticats are going. We talked to Marshall Ferguson about this a few weeks ago, and I know they have Cam Marshall, but defensive back Jackson Bennett has changed positions to running back. They have Sean Thomas Erlington. They drafted Malik Irons as well. It looks like all signs point to the Ticats going Canadian there.
And if they can, that opens up his position somewhere else, where they can, whether it's on the offensive line or they're able to get, a middle linebacker, or not a middle linebacker, but a linebacker that can, Larry Dean leaves a big hole.
He does, yeah.
Let's not forget about that. So there is holes to fill here, and if they can get a Canadian spot at a non-traditional position, that's going to open up a lot more options for them in holes where they need it.
Yeah, they signed Justin Tuggle at linebacker from Toronto, and also Lucas Waka has been there. And talked to Josh Smith from Podski Wee Wee and 3downnation.com. He's been playing special teams there. Maybe it's his time to step in and take over for Larry Dean in the middle. Receivers going to be another interesting spot, I think, in Hamilton. Jalen Saunders is now gone, and they had some guys come on last year, late in the year, that are going to be fun to watch. Rashad Lawrence is there, Braylon Addison, but then there are some guys returning. Shamad Chambers was injured earlier in the year. He gives them some Canadian depth at receiver. I know Mike Jones isn't Canadian, but he had that guy was a deep threat last year, made a lot of big plays for the Ticat offense, but I think the Canadian talent in Hamilton has me really excited. It breaks my heart to see a guy born in 1995 playing in the CFL, meaning, man, I think my time's passed. But David Ungerer III was a guy that was known as eligible for the CFL draft quite late, but they've got him lined up at slot behind Luke Tasker. If you have a Canadian playing slot back, that is massive for your team.
And we saw that with the Riders for all those years. With the Canadian Air Force, as they like to call it, and it makes a huge difference, especially at that position, a skill position. And don't get me wrong, Luke Tasker, hell of a slot receiver. But if he does get hurt, Unger can come in, and they're going to be able to find a position where they're going to have. It's kind of like a weird depth to have a national behind. Screw it. It's really weird to have a non-import behind an import player.
You have a tough time.
Change is bad. But if Unger has to come in because Luke Tasker's out, that opens up for an American to go onto the offensive line or somewhere else on the field. So that's huge. And if he turns out being better than Luke Tasker within a year, Luke Tasker's going to find him. I'm saying for sure, but he can find himself on the outs looking for a job.
Well, and Tasker has had injury issues in the past. He's not a guy that plays 18 games every year. No. So to have the depth at receiver even after letting Jalen Saunders go, I think that's big for that Tiger Cats team. Is Saunders going to land anywhere? Because man, that guy can play, and I'm kind of surprised nobody has taken a shot at him yet.
Does Montreal have room?
They might.
That would be my guess.
And then all of a sudden,
Right?
the Alouettes aren't bad on paper.
And the Alouettes are your 2019 Grey Cup champions. Could you imagine?
It could happen.
Yeah, we've seen them be good on paper for years and then go 3-16. So let's not count our chickens.
What's the futures bet there? Plus 1,800 for the Owls?
Yeah, that was last time I checked. I'll pull it up right now.
Oh, you might as well throw something down there.
Oh, don't tempt me with a good time. You think I'm a degenerate gambler or something?
Yes, I do.
Think or no?
I know.
It's fair.
Oh, man. Before we go to the Western Division and what the odds are for the Alouettes winning the Grey Cup, saying thank you to ATB Financial for sponsoring Two and Out this week. They have brought in the no-fee, all-in digital account. You don't want to deal with that extra mail, that extra fees, anything like that. So go all digital, and you don't have to pay any fees. You got to love that. You can bank, borrow, and save all in the same account, 0 fees. You can qualify for the line of credit as well. And then you've got the unlimited digital transactions and free Interact e-transfers. You get the interest on balances over $1,000. So Brazilian Ty, this sounds like the one for you. With all your gambling that you're moving, like your online money and everything like that, you better sign up for this, my friend.
Yeah, but I just use my credit card and I get PC points.
Well, how do I?
So now I'm in a bigger hole than I should be.
Make the switch. Get your no-fee all-in digital account at ATB Financial. Check them out at atb.com. Ty, what's the odds of the Owls?
Plus 1,600.
All right.
So $100 will win you $1,600.
I like that return.
Like, it's not bad.
If you're like me, put down, take your bottles in, and then bet that on the Alouettes.
Travis. Wait, I think I did my math wrong.
I think I've got $17 worth of bottles, so I might be okay. I might get about $40 back.
I don't take my bottles in, so.
Do you not recycle?
That's not what I'm saying.
For the amount of booze you go through, you've thrown like hundreds of dollars away.
I got nowhere to keep it.
Yeah.
And if I don't have to go down the stairs, I don't, because I got to come back up the stairs.
I feel you there, man. I feel you there.
That was a sweaty mess today.
Let's go to Winnipeg, where, you know what, offensive line might be the most intriguing part of camp in Winnipeg. And I think part of the reason that Winnipeg has become the favorites in a lot of people's minds is because of the continuity there. And what's really interesting going into this season, though, is that it's the last year on Mike O'Shea's deal. And a lot of the time, coaches don't go into the last year of their deal. They've got a guy waiting to be a head coach in Paul LaPolice. We've got another team hoping to come into the CFL. If that gets figured out this year, could Mike O'Shea be the guy to get the Schooners off the ground?
I think that almost makes too much sense. You don't, like you said, like coaches going into lame duck years. It's basically Grey Cup or bust for the Bombers, or for Mike O'Shea anyway.
Yeah.
I think, another loss, whether it be in the West Semi or the West Final, they'll move him out and bring Paul LaPolice in, and I don't think there'll be a whole lot of debate about it. And yeah, like you said, if they get the Atlantic Schooners off the ground and they need a coaching staff, I think Mike O'Shea would be the top candidate if he doesn't have a job.
You know what? It's actually incredible how long he's been the head coach in Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. It has been since, 2014 now? by far the longest.
He's the longest tenured
head coach in the CFL. I know that Calgary had a seamless transition between Huffnagel and Dickinson, but he's been the guy in Winnipeg for quite some time.
And nothing to show for it. I would imagine that front office is starting to be like, okay, it's time to crap or get off the pot. And I'm not saying it's all on Mike O'Shea. Like, the GM has to take some blame for putting the roster together, but when it comes down to it, it'll be Mike O'Shea that'll be the GOAT, and Kyle Walters will keep his job for an extra couple of years before he has to make another change. You get to fire one coach in basically any sport. You get to fire one coach as your saving grace. So if they don't win this year, even if they got to make the Grey Cup, I don't think they got to win it. But if they can make the Grey Cup and it's another step, it's some improvement, I think he's got a chance of staying. But if they don't, I think he's out the door.
So the Bombers' O-line loses Matthias Gosen to retirement and Suk Chung to BC. So there's going to be some changes in the interior on that offensive line. They waited on Jeff Gray, kind of a long-term deal with the draft pick there. So he's probably going to start at right guard. Michael Couture probably the center, and then Patty Neufeld over on the left side, but they have depth there still after losing those two all-star caliber O-linemen with drafting Drew Desjardins in the draft this past spring. But that's going to be an interesting position to watch for the Bombers. There's going to be a battle. Linebacker for Jovan Santos Knox's position, who is off to Edmonton. And how big is that signing of Chris Matthews opposite of Darvin Adams? All of a sudden, the Bombers have two big-bodied receivers for Matt Nichols. You have to assume he's happy with that.
If he's not, he's got some issues.
Yeah, it looks like Canberell Tompkins hasn't reported to camp, so there's kind of a battle going on for the fifth receiver spot in Winnipeg as well. Rasheed Bailey so far has been the guy with the inside track to that position. He was actually on BC's practice squad in 2015, and he was a part of Carolina's final cuts last August, so we'll see what he does when we're at game speed for preseason games next week.
Yeah, and Kimbrel Tompkins was a serviceable receiver.
Yeah.
He never really had that, where he would be a monster for a stretch. But if they can, figure out the O-line, you got to keep Matt Nichols upright, I think, is number one, because with Chris Matthews and Darvin Adams, you'd need Matt Nichols healthy to get them the ball. And that all starts with your O-line. And we say it week in and week out. You lose a line battle, and it's really hard to win a football game. And I get that, it's, like you said, continuity has been huge, but things are going to turn over at some point, so we have to see how Boomers are going to handle it. And by the looks of it on paper, and you look at how they drafted it, they should be okay.
Another team that needs to keep their quarterback healthy, I mean, the Bombers at least have Strevler to back up Matt Nichols, but the Riders behind Zach Collaros, it is looking pretty grim. I know there is Cody Fajardo and there's David Watford, but Collaros is going to be the guy that gives them the best chance to win. So the offensive line battle in Saskatchewan is another place where it is wide open. Dan Clark is not there yet. He's had the car accident there, and apparently he's okay. They do want to make sure he is 100% before they get him back onto the field. So it looks like Labatt has been taking the snaps at center there, but they've got a new rookie coming in. He was with the NFL a little bit. Dakota Shepley there. Thaddeus Coleman is there, and it looks like him and Labatt are the only two guys that are guaranteed a spot on the offensive line. I don't want to say guaranteed, but it'd be pretty tough for Labatt or Thaddeus Coleman to lose their positions on the O-line, but there's a lot of bodies playing for only a few spots in Saskatchewan.
And maybe, just maybe, they might be able to dress more than 6 offensive linemen if they have this many in camp.
It's possible.
Because they don't have Eddie Steele anymore. So,
yeah.
that I know that it didn't really come back to bite them in the ass that much, but it's just a sticking point with me. Like, you talk about depth, and we talk about it all the time, and how deep some of these teams are. I just didn't understand how you only dress when guys are going in and out as much as they were last year. It's so easy to get an ankle rolled on. You're kind of playing with fire to not have guys dress, but competition in camp is really good regardless of who it is. It makes guys step up and play better and perform better in front of the coaching staff. So if they can find the right mix, and if Dan Clark's okay, the O-line should be okay. And like I said, Dakota Shepley, when they drafted him a couple of years ago, we kind of knew he wasn't going to come to the CFL right away, but we also kind of knew that he was that good. So here's hoping.
Receiver spot's going to be interesting as well. The new Canadians have kind of been banged up. Picton has been hurt. Justin McInnes, Braden Lennius has been hurt. I think we're going to be watching K.D. Cannon and Kyron Moore make some plays this year. But I do want to shout out to Manny Arsenault. What an absolute monster. He had a ACL injury in August, and he's been at camp making plays. Most guys are out for at least a year after that.
That is insane. Like, I play 2 games of slow pitch on a Saturday, and I'm out till Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it just shows his work ethic.
absolutely.
It's off the charts there.
And commitment to his rehab, obviously, too. To go through torn ACL and go through the surgery and then rehab, and you got to make sure you're diligent on it, not overworking it, and making sure you're doing all the right things. And I don't want to say that it's a built-in excuse, but I don't foresee a good 9 weeks for Manny Arsenault, opening 9 weeks, as per usual. A couple touchdowns here and there, but I wouldn't expect much with a torn ACL 9 months ago? It's a little crazy.
It looks like Jamal Morrow is a name at running back that has been impressing early on. He went to Washington State University. Maybe he is the backup behind William Powell to start the season. And we talked about quarterback controversies in Toronto and maybe how that will help James Franklin. It's got to help a guy like Zach Collaros, who they did not name the starting quarterback until basically the last minute. A lot wanted Brandon Bridge to be the guy, and then he ended up getting hurt in a preseason game, and that position was kind of a mess last year. He comes in knowing he is the guy, and he has to be the guy for the Rough Riders if they want a playoff spot in the West Division. So maybe that's got to help his psyche as well.
I think it absolutely helps him mentally, but we cannot have a repeat of last year with the injuries. When he went down in week 2 with the concussion, we kind of knew that the defense is really going to have to step up. And, with the additions they made on the defensive side of the ball, the defense doesn't worry me as much as I thought it would. Zach Collaros being behind center worries me because he has not been the same since his injury in 2015 or 2014. He has not been the guy that has scrambled and ran for big plays and made plays with his feet and thrown on the run. It seems like he's tentative and he's not the same quarterback. And if he can find trust in his O-line and the O-line can protect him and he can become that pocket passer that he needs to be, and he can still run and escape trouble. We've seen it. If they can protect him, then he should have a good year. The only thing I'm worried about is the injuries.
Let's talk about Calgary now, who ended up releasing running back Romar Morris. If you played fantasy last year, you know that he had some monster games late in the season. He did suffer an Achilles injury late last year. The Stamps are going to be rehabbing him. Maybe he'll be able to join the team later on. But Kadeem Carey was with the Chicago Bears of the NFL, and now he is in Calgary, and he has been fun to watch. So, I mean, the three-headed monster might continue at running back for the Stampeders with Don Jackson, Terry Williams, and now Kadeem Carey. It looks like the Stamps could go all Canadian at defensive tackle, and overall, the defense is going to be the spot that's going to have the most turnover for the Stampeders. They lost some horses on the defensive line. At linebacker, they lost Alex Singleton, so that'll be a position to watch. Lamar Durant has gone on offense. Richard Sindani has been, making some plays at camp, but maybe two guys we need to watch. Gump Hayes looks to be the guy replacing Keontae Evans, and with a name like Gump Hayes, that's got to be top 5 best name in the CFL.
Yeah,
Currently,
I would have to concede that. Currently, yes, for sure. Yeah, I'll give you that one.
Looks like Deshaun Amos will be one to watch at halfback as well, taking over for Emmanuel Davis. Up the QE2 to Edmonton. The Eskimos bring back Martese Jackson. I don't know why, but the return game has just been a black hole for the Edmonton Eskimos, basically since Gizmo's been gone.
That is an understatement.
Jackson made some plays last year, but, I mean, if the schemes aren't there, it's not going to help anything.
No, that's 100%. If you don't have your blocking schemes down pat and the personnel to run them, it really doesn't matter who your return guy is. It's going to be really hard to break the big one.
They make some releases as well. Mason Woods, offensive lineman, that was a part of the James Franklin trade. Defensive tackle Mikhail Brooks is gone. And at wide side linebacker Adam Konar is gone. But that's kind of expected because of the linebackers they brought in Larry Dean, Don Unamba, and also Javon Santos-Knox. I would say receiver might be an interesting spot to watch in Edmonton. Tavares Daniels and Greg Ellingson, they're going to be starting. Ricky Collins probably is going to start there as well. But what about the other two receivers in Edmonton? That will be an interesting battle as we move through camp, because there are a lot of guys that come in Eskimos. There are a lot of guys that come in Edmonton. There's another guy, Bryce Bobo. That might be another one that is in the running for best name in the CFL. But there's some vets there. Kenny Stafford, Kevin Elliott, and the new Canadian that came back from the NFL after a few years, Tavon Smith. So Edmonton still has depth and options at receiver despite all of the losses.
It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. That being said, after Greg Ellingson and Tavares Daniels and Ricky Collins, you don't need to have, quote-unquote, the playmaker, right? You don't need to have the guy that's going to break huge plays. Ellingson, Collins, and Daniels should attract enough attention themselves that whoever they put in that spot, should have some opportunity to draw weaker coverages or weaker corners and make some plays and become, I don't want to call them a possession receiver, but like a safety valve for Trevor Harris. The guys that they have there, Natea Jay has been there. He's finally starting to get some snaps, and a guy like Kevin Elliott and Kenny Stafford. Don't forget Anthony Parker.
Yeah,
is there there's going to be competition for those 4 and 5 spots, and they'll probably have, and then they'll have the practice roster. They're going to be deep at receiver, and it just seems to be the story in Edmonton the last couple of years.
If you were wondering about Bryant Mitchell, he ends up getting released by the Arizona Cardinals, but was signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so it might be some time, if ever, we see him back in the CFL.
So he goes from one team with no quarterback to another team with no quarterback, so that should bode well for a wide receiver.
We go now to the West Coast. The BC Lions, who over the last week have signed Adam Konar, so he's probably going to be starting on the defense for the Lions, who their linebacking core took some hits in the offseason. They bring in offensive lineman Brett Boyko, who the Lions have been waiting on for a long time. He was spending some time in the National Football League, so I'm sure Mike Riley is going to be happy to see him back there, but he was drafted by the Lions. Holy man, that was 2015 now. So it's about time the guy from Saskatoon gets up to the CFL, and he'll be playing for the Lions this year, at least to provide some depth before he gets up to speed with the Canadian game.
There's that word again, the depth.
Yeah,
You can never have enough of it, especially in football. Almost any sport, really. I mean, granted, baseball and basketball, you don't need it as much. But and it's not even organizational depth, it's just depth on the game day roster you need, because every play has a chance to end somebody's season, and you need somebody there that can fill in instantly. And so, it's never a bad idea to sign enough guys where you're like, if you have tough decisions to make coming out of training camp on who to cut, then you're in a good position.
I think a lot of people thought John White's CFL career would be coming to an end, but he had a resurgence with Hamilton last year, and he is the inside track as the starting guy for the BC Lions. I think one battle to watch is probably the defensive end position opposite of Odell Willis. I know Odell's been in the league for a long, long time, but they got some horses competing for that spot. I want Ebenezer Ogundeko to get that, because
that is the best name in the CFL.
That would instantly be the number one name in the Canadian Football League. But Darius Allen might be the one being able to rush the quarterback opposite of Odell. But who doesn't want to be on that defense opposite of Odell?
I was just going to say, that's going to be the most coveted position on that roster, because you know that you're going to get a lot of one-on-ones. And you're going to have a chance to shine, which means you're going to get a chance to get paid.
Gotta like that.
I wouldn't hate it.
If I work opposite of you, would I get paid?
Like as my assistant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much? What's the starting salary?
Double the work, half the pay.
Oh, damn.
Seniority, bud.
Oh, man. So that does it for talking everything training camp. The battles are going to shape up over the next week. Injuries are going to happen. Cuts are going to happen. But we will be back next week to talk about that. Plus, we've got a game coming up. This Sunday, the BC Lions are in Edmonton. I don't think that Mike Riley will take any snaps, but, man, it's going to be good to have some Canadian football back. It's Brazilian Ty and Travis Currah, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. I want to give a shout-out to Kyle Marshall, who is the host of Putting It Together. They just crossed the 10,000 download mark, and it's a look at Stephen Sondheim's body of work. If you haven't heard the name, you've probably heard his music. He is a composer, and he has contributed to a lot of great movies. Sweeney Todd, Into the Woods. You got to check that out.
Never saw it.
You goof. He does have an Oscar, so that shows you how good he is. So check out Putting It Together with Kyle Marshall, a part of the Alberta Podcast Network. Check out all the other great shows at albertapodcastnetwork.com. Ty, will I see you at the Eskimos-Lions game on Sunday?
I am a definite maybe.
A definite maybe.
Yeah, well, it depends on how the slow pitch goes on. I'm not playing, but I think I've been volunteered to babysit.
Really?
Everybody's bringing their kids.
You are the babysitter?
They said they'd pay me in beer. How do I turn that down?
Oh, this is going to end well.
Yeah, I'll wear my GoPro.
Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.